Well, this Friday, March 8th, is International Women's Day, a time to check in on the state of gender equality around the world and call for more progress. We're going to take a closer look at the situation in one of the worst countries for women's rights in the world. That's Afghanistan. And we're going to talk about it with someone who knows the situation very well, our senior reporter, Catherine Norris Trent. Catherine, good to see you.
Hi, Alison.
Since the Taliban took over in August 2021, the situation for women in Afghanistan has gone from bad to worse. Take us through what's changed since then.
Right, remember when the Taliban rolled into Kabul in August 2021, there were a lot of fears about what it could mean for women's rights. And, you know, from activists I've been speaking to on the ground, they're saying that a lot of these fears have basically come true for them. So the Ministry for Women's Affairs was pretty much instantly turned into the Ministry for Vice and Virtue, the Taliban's moral police, the Ministry for the Propagation of Virtue and Prevention of Vice. And they go around checking basically that people are obeying Sharia law properly. So rather than looking into concerns about women's health and etc. and rights, well, they're cracking down on things like dress code. The Taliban have introduced a very strict dress code, even in places like Kabul. In May 22, they put out a decree saying that women had to basically cover their face. The only part showing could be their eyes, or they would prefer women to just basically wear the full-on burqa or chador, the blue all-covering garment that we can kind of see in a lot of pictures of Afghanistan throughout the ages, such as this one here, which doesn't allow any part of a woman to be visible. And they have been having a crackdown on this dress code in the past year, so women being arrested in Kabul in streets or in private learning centres, running English courses, things like that. There's been cases of women being whipped or arrested and taken into police custody because Taliban say they're not respecting the hijab dress code. Then we've had things like beauty salons or gyms, places for women only, being closed down. Some of those have been taking place in private apartments in cities like Kabul, but there's been a crackdown on those too. We know women have been banned from public and private universities, as well as girls over 12 attending school, and public spaces such as parks in Kabul. The Taliban say that women there weren't respecting Sharia law in their judgment, so they're not allowed out, basically, in a lot of places, especially without a guardian, a male guardian, a mahram, for journeys over 72 kilometres or going outside of the country. Women cannot go on their own without a close male relative. So you can see there's a whole raft of measures, around 50 decrees in all, which have curtailed women's rights in the public spaces. And women I've been speaking to say basically they feel that they have to just stay home, that there is no space for them outside.
And you mentioned that ban on education for women over 12. That was one of the things that sort of shocked the outside world the most. How has that situation changed? Has it gotten any better? Are women sort of finding ways to access education?
Well, the Taliban had initially pledged after closing secondary schools for girls over 12, basically they weren't allowed access to schools anymore. And they said they would come back on this. And remember, in March 2022, there was hope that girls could return. In fact, some of them turned up at the school gates. But there was a U-turn on that. Girls were in tears. They couldn't go to their secondary schools. It is still the case. They're still not open. Now, there are some secret schools, such as this one that I filmed in Kabul myself. Quite a few of these, anecdotally, are open. We don't have figures on that, where basically teachers and students take risks by going every day to these locations and learning. Now, they won't graduate with an official diploma, which means, obviously their access to higher education and university is pretty much impossible, posing big questions about the future. But they are still going, and some of the schools have had links with international universities or educational establishments to get those girls further education. That's if, of course, they can travel outside of the country. For that, you need money. You need, again, a male guardian. So it's very, very complicated, but some are trying to continue to learn, taking big risks in doing so.
And Catherine, just after the Taliban takeover, we did see some protests from women out in the street. What's the situation now? Have they been able to sort of keep up with those protests?
Well, no is the short answer. We all remember those pictures of women coming out with the hand-drawn signs in defiance of the Taliban in those days after August 15th, 2021. That has really pretty much stopped at the moment. These pictures, which I guess you can see behind me, are very chaotic. They're of a women's protest in 2023, which was broken up by the Taliban firing at protesters. And that's basically what happened. They cracked down on them and broke them up with gunfire, arresting women. Women had started protesting at home. And so this is rather chaotic footage as well, but it shows them entering a home, and women would, they'd get together and just hold up signs and put that out on the internet. And that even is not possible anymore. Those were women there being arrested after attempting such a gathering. So there are still women's rights activists in Afghanistan. Some of them have fled. Some of them have been arrested, and then that's still a matter of great shame within Afghanistan and for their families. But they're very much isolated. So they're kind of reaching out online, communicating, but it's getting harder and harder for them to have spaces to protest, basically.